The content in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. Whilst we love unpacking psychological research and evidence-based insights to support well-being, this podcast is not a substitute for personal mental health care or therapy. Nothing we say should be taken as individualized advice. If anything you hear brings up concerns for you, we strongly encourage you to speak with your GP, psychologist, or another qualified health professional. You deserve support that's tailored to you.
Welcome to This Might Help, where psychology research meets real life. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Lauren Rossetti.
And I'm Dr. Kira Hart. We are two Australian psychologists.
Yes.
And today we're discussing social media and whether being on social media is making us more mean and more critical and more harsh.
Yes. This has been on our list of episode topics for a really long time.
Yeah.
And the last social media episode we did was our very first episode ever.
That's insane.
Yeah, so we're bringing it back around, but with a different topic. Last time we spoke about just having a kind of good relationship with social media.
Yes.
Now we're talking about how it might be making us more critical. And this comes off the back of social media kind of transforming our worlds from being just like passive observers of what's going on to active participants in conflict and criticism and kind of the social narrative.
Yeah.
Historically, when there was celebrity drama, but there wasn't social media, we might see it on TV or we might consume it in a magazine. But now we can like and we can share and we can comment and we can all be kind of commentators or critics as well.
Exactly. Nowadays, everyone's having private conversations about what we're seeing online.
Yeah.
Or some people are in the comment section writing some nasty replies, some maybe neutral replies, but being on social media definitely amplifies the drama that maybe we once would have read in a magazine, spoken about it with our girlfriends over a coffee or had a quick gossip about the latest celebrity drama. But nowadays, the everyday person is an active participant almost, or can be an active participant in getting involved in celebrity drama and sharing like reels or I'm thinking of the Alex Earl and Alex Cooper beef going on at the moment.
Yes.
There's all this drama on TikTok between them and, you know, people are making reels like commentating about the drama, which are getting like millions of views, thousands of likes.
Yes.
And, you know, everyday people were active participants in online conflict.
Yeah, and we're maybe picking sides and we're analysing this in real time, and we also are able to consume and access it so frequently. Like we have access to it all day, every day, at night, when you're in bed, when you wake up in the morning. It's just a lot of exposure.
When you're supposed to be working and you check your phone. When you're cooking dinner and you check your phone.
Yes, absolutely. And it creates this kind of drama ecosystem that's going on social media. And, you know, we've all watched an online pile-on unfold. Like if a celebrity, you know, said something controversial or if an influencer did something that you thought was a bit questionable, we see that so often. And you might also notice yourself being harsher online than you would be face to face. And that might be either, you know, people might be actively commenting, you know, in these comment sections,
whether that be on their actual account or a burner account or
and it might also be
other people's comments.
Yes, absolutely. And then it might even be that, you know, within the group chats with friends, and or even if we're not actively participating, so we don't comment on the post or, you know, we're not resharing things, we might be kind of we're still taking in and feeling pulled into a lot of these dramas that we wouldn't normally be exposed to. And the boundary between kind of creator and audience and critic, this is like collapsed on social media, which impacts how we relate to others psychologically. So that's that's kind of what we're unpacking today. Unpacking the psychology behind why the internet and particularly social media can make us harsher, can make us more divided and more critical, and what we can try and do about that relationship.
Yeah.
But before we get fully stuck into all of the things, let's do our wellbeing wins and wobbles.
Let's do it. And I think we might just have our biggest wellbeing win of the entire podcast. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Loz, because this is not fair if it's my wellbeing win. It's definitely yours.
I feel this, I'm just recognizing an emotion in myself, which is this deep, uncomfortable feeling about sharing something personal. But yes, I did get engaged. And I'm only saying that because people will see the ring on my finger. And so I feel that it is appropriate to say that.
Yes.
That's all the details we're getting. But yes, that's a very big wellbeing win. My wellbeing wobble is related to this engagement in that nothing about being engaged, but that I was maybe a little intense and a little stressed and a little full on in the lead up in terms of like, when's it happening?
Yes.
What are the details? You know, there was a bit of that going on. I'm sure if anyone else has been in the same position where you're like, no, it's coming, but you're not sure quite when, maybe they can relate to that feeling. I don't want to say, just a bit intense. What was yours, Kira? Let's move on to you.
No, my wellbeing win was your engagement as well. I know it's a you thing, but it was really lovely to celebrate with you both. And then I don't even I feel like I can't even have a wellbeing wobble because I had such a good week. Like, it was so happy.
Perfect.
So let's move on to
you don't need a wobble, just a win for you this week. You're mostly always wins. That's good. Okay. So now I'm gonna move us on. The online disinhibition effect is what we're talking about first. Okay. This is essentially that we are consistently behaving more critically and aggressively online than we might be face to face. Yeah. So we are I guess in our real life, when we maybe think a thought or we're having an internal reaction to something that we're seeing, we can inhibit ourselves or we can stop ourselves from maybe being outwardly critical or having that reaction in person to someone. When we're online, that ability to stop that action or stop that from happening is less, right? Because we're online, we're kind of not face to face, and so we don't stop those reactions as much. There are a few things that lead to this. One of them is the anonymity of being online or just essentially being anonymous. So you have reduced accountability for your actions, especially if people are commenting in a way where they're on an account that is, like you said, a burner account or it's got no link to who they are. But even when you know that like that person, say it's an influencer or a celebrity, they don't know who you are.
No.
Even if it's like a news agency or something like that, they're posting a story about a celebrity.
A news agency, like a news website.
Yeah.
So I was just imagining like a local news agency, like the corner shop. Okay, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, I don't know, BuzzFeed or whoever.
A media company posting an article.
Some Instagram account for a news outlet is posting a story about a celebrity that's critical. And if you comment on that, you're not thinking the celebrity's going to see this or the person's going to see this. And we feel this reduced accountability for that. And it's like no one knows it was you. And so we feel less responsible and we feel less social consequences for being maybe more cruel or being more harsh because it's not face to face. We're not getting that live feedback. Then the invisibility of it. So you can't see the person you're talking to. So that reduces the kind of empathy we would feel in the moment. And it can make it easier to dehumanize other people. So, whether that's celebrities or, influencers or even just strangers online.
Yeah.
Because we can't see them, they feel kind of invisible and they feel less like a full person.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because you can't see them. You can't see the world that they're existing in.
You can't see them picking up their phone and reading the comment you left on their post.
Yeah.
And them like appearing disheartened about it or appearing upset. That's invisible to you.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And then there's this asynchronicity. So there's essentially you craft responses. Let's say people are actively commenting or engaging in something. You aren't doing that in kind of real time, right? So that means that you can craft a quick and witty response, or you can sit there and mull over the words and the way that you're going to communicate something online without actually witnessing, like you said, that impact of it.
Yeah.
So you're not saying something in the moment and then seeing the way that that person responds. You can kind of craft this reply but not see the consequence of it in the moment. And that means that we're more likely to put kind of harsh comments online, more likely to kind of join in on pile-ons and express more of like a moral outrage online than we would offline.
Exactly, because offline moral outrage is costly. Like if we're going to confront someone and dispute them or say something negative to them, we have to face the social backlash that comes with that face to face, and possibly put ourselves in physical danger. Hopefully not, but that's a possible consequence. Whereas online, it's much easier to have those moral outrage and to comment a negative thing. Whereas online, it's easier to have moral outrage and it's often actually rewarded with engagement and likes. And we're not by any means saying that our listeners are trolls, because we obviously know you're not. Speaking just generally across the theme that the online platforms are becoming more harsh, more critical, more like riddled with troll content.
And just negativity.
Yeah.
And I guess what I was really interested in and what we've discussed a lot in the lead up for this episode is that it's not just about whether you do or don't participate in the commentary online. A lot of us aren't actively leaving critical comments. A lot of us aren't necessarily liking or resharing that content. A lot of us, however, are consuming it and taking it in and absorbing all this content. And that exposure to this negative environment and this quick, harsh, sharp judgment all the time is shaping the way that our brains engage with other people. It's shaping how we're feeling when we leave these online environments. Like, it's having a negative effect. And so even if we're not actively, saying, oh yeah, blah, 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 and like leaving that as a comment, we might still be taking in some negative effects from just absorbing this all the time.
100%. And we know that the algorithms reward outrage. So social media platforms, they're not designed to be neutral environments. They're designed to maximize engagement. Which is done through controversial, emotionally charged opinions and polarizing content. It's not promoted through accurate content or kindness or nuanced takes. Whereas, outrage and anger increase shares and increase comments and time spent on the platform. So there's been research on emotionally charged language. And the research shows that language like evil and disgusting, dangerous and shame, that spreads a lot faster and a lot further than more neutral content. So maybe in our social posts, we need to start by, using all this like emotionally charged language to get views. Maybe that's what we need to do.
No, we don't and we won't.
No, we're too nuanced and kind.
Yes, but all of us can relate to that, in that, the stuff you see spread so far, the stuff you see with huge engagement, the stuff you see kind of take off into media and other outlets is the stuff that's really morally and emotionally charged and is often negative critiques about something that people don't like about you know, what this person did, or they don't like the way they looked, or they don't like something.
Yeah.
It's often all about that.
Yeah.
But we are then subtly being conditioned to be more extreme and to speak more definitively and to criticize more harshly and to kind of fall into that more black and white thinking style of, you know, this was bad and this is not good and this was, you know, something that someone did that was wrong, rather than sitting in the nuance and the balance of that and thinking about, you know, what are the true sides to this story. Over time, this shifts our perception of what is normal and what a normal level of conflict and criticism looks like.
100%. And social media has normalized public critique as entertainment and also like a group-based activity or a group-based shaming activity. As a form of social bonding as well. Like, if I'm thinking about kind of the big headlines of this year that revolve around maybe like influencers fighting with each other or like conflict in the media, it has been shared in like group chats, or it is something that like my friends and I know anecdotally about what's happening. So it's can easily be discussed in like everyday conversations, which is quite bizarre that we know about, you know, conflict between two American influencers with the same name, Alex. But it's just like, everyday news in the opposite side of the world.
Yes. And we can end up thinking that there is a diffusion of responsibility, or that can kind of happen in these spaces because often these things are really big, right? Like that, you know, Alex Earl and Alex Cooper, these are like two celebrities. It's a big conversation with lots of input. And so when there's lots of people in the pylon, or it's in the context of celebrities, we might think that, you know, an individual comment doesn't make a difference. Like my one comment or my one opinion is, you know, it doesn't have an impact because there's so many people commenting.
Thousands of comments. Yeah.
But then collectively, when there is that diffusion of responsibility and no one feels like they're responsible for those comments, it makes a big impact because, you know, it's like adding to the pile.
Yes.
Yeah. And then that kind of moral outrage online can become also a bit of a social like signaling tool of our values and who we align with as a group. So we might participate in this discourse or share an opinion or share something to show kind of, let's say, which side we're on as a way of feeling connected to a group. But that also involves this polarization then, because we can become kind of grouped on sides. When we're grouped on these sides as well, or let's say like you engage, even if kind of accidentally, you know, you engage with content from one side, if it's kind of a sided opinion, the algorithms, as we know, then kind of feed that information more. So you might fall into the situation where we're seeing more and more and more opinions or criticism from that side of the picture, and that can decrease that nuance even further because we're seeing less about, you know, the other side of the story.
It decreases the nuance and increases the polarization of the content that we're being seen. And we just see kind of the one opinion and then that's exacerbated further.
Yes, absolutely. We know, and we've talked lots about how social media kind of builds that constant evaluation of other people, but also of ourselves. And we really evaluate ourselves by comparing to everyone around us. But when we're engaged in social media, then we're able to compare ourselves with just an endless number of people. And it's 24/7. Like there's no end to kind of the comparison opportunity. And it, you know, you find yourself asking questions about like, how do I compare to these people? Like, where do I rank within this kind of system? And criticism culture and comparison culture go kind of hand in hand and reinforce each other. So the more we consume this kind of curated, idolized, very polished content and lives, the more harshly we may judge both others that we see online and also ourselves.
Yeah.
So we might see we're essentially being exposed to just a pool of lots of perfect, ideal content, even if it's not necessarily perfect all the time. It's still, you know, often a highlight reel and all of these wonderful things. But that can lead us to more harshly critique everyone because we're seeing that as a standard. And then it also can lead us to critique ourselves more harshly because we're viewing this standard of, you know, what we think everything should look like and be like. And then when we reflect on ourselves, we have those expectations. And then criticizing others in this context can also function as a way of kind of managing that comparison anxiety. So it can be, if I point out what's wrong with someone else, then I don't have to sit with my own insecurities as long. Like those types of things can come up because we're exposed to so much of this type of content. Yeah. Even just seeing, you know, I was telling you an example earlier about like being on TikTok before and just noticing, I used to notice, okay, open the comment section of a post that I thought was really just benign and neutral and, you know, nothing. I essentially had watched a TikTok and thought, you know, you couldn't say anything bad about this. Like this is really like
non-polarizing, just like
standard content that I thought, you know, that's really harmless. Open the comment section and there are all of these negative comments about really small things that I would never have occurred to me to think. For example, like, oh, have you thought to brush the back of your teeth? Or like something random and small like this. That then, you know, makes your brain think, okay, that's something that we could criticize or compare about, but it also can create more of these internal and personal insecurities that you start to reflect on.
Like, what do my teeth look like? Like, do I need to change this about myself as well?
Yes. And I think this was a couple of years ago when I, you know, if I'd been like on TikTok and just noticing that every time I would scroll, I would automatically open the comment section, but then that would often be just scrolling through and consuming all of these negative comments and your brain is drawn to them. It's picking out the kind of negative things within that. But then that can make you think, oh, it's normal to see this person doing something, you know, harmless or everyday and to think these critical or negative thoughts about them or to pick up these small things about what they're doing and criticize them. Whereas you would never in real life see that person doing that thing and think these thoughts or communicate them to someone else. Like that would pass on by. Whereas now we can see it on TikTok, we can rewatch it and then we can view all of the kind of negative things that other people might be saying about it.
And so with that in note, it's no surprise that consuming social media can have these mental health impacts. The first one being increased anxiety and emotional reactivity. So the constant exposure we have to conflict and criticism and polarization online, it leads to hypervigilance and emotional fatigue. If you even think about like what's happening physically in your body when you're online and you're reading a negative comment, your body's probably reacting and responding to that. And so over time that's going to build up. And we may also internalize the harshness we're seeing online, as you just gave with your example of when you're on TikTok, just reading those comment sections, you can start to internalize some of that negative feedback you're seeing online.
Even if we don't realize it, it can also make our own internal dialogue. So the way that we're talking to ourselves in our mind or the way that we're thinking about others in our mind, that can shift because the norm or the regular thing we're exposed to is a lot of negative commentary. And so we might in turn take that negative commentary and start turning it inwards to ourselves.
Yes.
So we might find that our kind of self-talk becomes harsher or more negative. We might find that our internal thoughts about others and what's going on is more critical too. It's essentially like even what we know with, say, gratitude practices, for example, like when we're practicing gratitude, we're making our mind aware and focused on the good things that have happened in our day. And that's priming our brain to pick up and see and identify more of the good things in our lives in general. In the opposite effect, if we're taking in, consuming, seeing, and drawing our mind towards negative information and negative commentary more often, then our brain is primed to see that and kind of go to those thoughts more often. And our brain is already, we know we have a negativity bias where our brain is primed to kind of see those negative things and become more stuck on them more regularly. So kind of a double whammy. Yeah. We also can get the sense that we need to be perfect, or there's this expectation to be perfect when we're consuming or seeing a lot of criticism for people that we might idolize. So, you know, you might see someone and they're in, you know, you idolize them on social media, or you have like, they're in this particular status, say, they're getting a lot of criticism. And so then you might think, okay, if they need to be perfect and we idolize them and they still get all this negative commentary and this hate and these opinions, then I need to be really perfect as well because my life looks different and yet people are still criticizing this person.
100%. And with that socially prescribed perfectionism, we know that social media is a platform of beautiful, amazing influencers and really promotes that perfectionism, which is an unrealistic standard. But that kind of is what's idolized and platformed on these social media platforms. But it's not the norm. And I really enjoyed, there was a comedy sketch by Josh Thomas from the Melbourne Comedy Festival last week. And he ironically posted it on Instagram, which is where I consume this content. But in his sketch, he speaks about how we're always kind of doing that upward social comparison to the most beautiful people. And we're not comparing ourselves to the everyday people on the bus. Like that is normal. When you hop on a bus or when you hop on public transport and you look around you, like they're the people existing in your world. They're the people kind of like in your physical life, but we're using the perfect
all the influencers, all the celebrities, we're using these people online as the benchmark often, even if it's not necessarily a conscious thing where you're saying, okay, this is what I'm striving for. Even if that's not conscious, when you consume this content all the time and that becomes the normal, people where you're regularly getting their life updates most often, that kind of can become this subconscious benchmark that you're holding yourself to.
And you think that's normal. That's what everyone looks like and what everyone's life looks like. When it's not.
No. There's also reduced empathy and more of that black and white thinking, which we've talked about, that can also come from this kind of repeated exposure. So when things are more dehumanized or they're simplified, so it's more of an us versus them, it's more of a right versus wrong kind of narrative online, that makes having nuanced thinking harder because we're not necessarily being challenged to sit and think about both sides and how this affects, you know, all different people and what the nuances are in that conversation. We're often consuming short form, quick content that really has a more black and white lens. And empathy has also been a declining trait in the literature over time. So social media is probably one of the factors that may be contributing to that as well.
And social media can impact our identity and create performative conformity where rather than, you know, expressing our own opinions, we're saying what we think we're supposed to say and kind of jumping on the bandwagon of those more popular opinions we're seeing online rather than what we actually think. And we know that social media intensifies like peer evaluation. We see back and forth critique constantly on these platforms. And if we think about young people in particular who want to fit in, who want to be accepted, this is a really vulnerable age group for those peer evaluation dynamics. So it's understandable that lots of people jump on the bandwagons that they're seeing online because they want to fit in and they want to be accepted, even if it's at the expense of their true beliefs and their true opinions. It can be easier just to conform to the groupthink.
Yeah. And when we know that this is having a negative impact on like our mental health and our feelings, you know, where we might go on these platforms, we feel a bit like yucky when we're consuming all of this negative information, we, you know, might still keep participating in it.
Why? Why do we do this?
We are often subtly rewarded for contributing to it. So there are psychological rewards of kind of participating in this online environment.
Yeah.
One of them is the validation that we might get from, you know, the likes and the agreement and the engagement from, you know, sharing these opinions. Another factor might be the feeling of belonging. There can be like a feeling of status if, you know, we were on the right side or we were on, you know, we feel like we were kind of one to call out something. And so we can be psychologically rewarded in that way for participating. There is also the fact that kind of a small proportion of people on social media platforms generate this more critical content. You know, it's a small proportion of people contributing to it, but it disproportionately shapes the whole platform. Like we all know that a lot of the content that we consume online can be from this negative lens, but it's not all of the people on there making it. You know, it's a smaller amount of people, but like we talked about, the algorithm makes it kind of the biggest voice or the thing that we most commonly see on the platform. But most people are not as maybe mean or harsh or critical as the internet might make it seem, but that's the tone that we might take away.
And it's the tone that the majority of people are saying from the minority of people creating the content that's exploding online.
And we have just talked about, I guess, a whole lot of kind of very like negative things that we might experience on these social media platforms, and a lot of the like we've talked a lot about that negative lens. It's not to say that all engagement on social media is, you know, all negative. We all know that when we go on social media platforms and when we're consuming content that we see lots of funny things, we see lots of lighthearted things, we see lots of really positive, influential things that can help us expand our thinking as well. You know, we might see a lot of content about, you know, different perspectives and people's experiences and
educational content.
Exactly. We can consume a lot of things that really help us to actually deepen our perspectives or expose us to positive things that we might not come across in our daily lives. You know, like there's a lot of that content too. And there's also a lot of support that we can find on social media where, you know, something may have happened, someone's shared something personal, or they've shared their lived experience, and then there's a lot of support and positivity which can uplift us. That is obviously still happening on social media, and that's important to still, you know, be able to enjoy and be exposed to. It's just that the negative and critical and harsh side of social media can often prevail or come through more strongly. And it's what our brains are maybe prone to seeing and thinking about. And so what we can do is try and shift our relationship with that content and the amount of time that we're exposed to it, so that we're really reaping the benefits and the positives of social media and limiting these negatives.
Exactly. So let's now chat about some strategies that can help us reduce our exposure to the negative side of social media, such as the mean comments left on some TikTok posts.
Yeah.
And also, you know, have a more positive relationship with social media and reap the wonderful content that's on there, on the platforms as well. So one idea is to pause before engaging.
Yeah.
So before commenting and sharing and jumping on a pile on, asking yourself, would I say this to their face? Do I know the whole story?
Yeah.
Am I adding something useful? And if not, don't comment.
Yeah. So making some space between that initial thought and reaction that we want to engage because, you know, we know with social media that a lot of those barriers that we would normally experience are gone. It can be a lot quicker to kind of see and think, yes, I'm engaging, or yes, I'm going to like this, or yes, I'm going to share this straight away. But having that breather before about, is this a good idea? Would I typically do this?
And that breather is really important because in that moment we can notice how our body is responding.
Yeah.
So the content we see online, maybe it elicits a genuine psychological response within our body. Maybe we're experiencing outrage or we're experiencing anxiety, and we have that elevated heart rate and muscle tension, or our jaw is clenching, we're feeling sweaty.
Yeah.
Use this as a cue to put the phone down rather than engage further. And you don't have to act on every emotion that the internet induces in you.
Yes. And it can be that, you know, you're sitting there, you're scrolling through content, or you're consuming something, or you're watching reels, and your brain is, you know, wired to kind of pick up and engage with this emotionally charged content.
Yes.
But then you might notice, okay, I'm beginning to feel stressed. You know, this information isn't necessarily related to me, but I'm starting to feel this stress response. I'm starting to feel my heart rate quicken. I'm feeling not very good about kind of what I'm taking in. And that can be a moment to help us realize, okay, this is a time to step away.
Yeah.
It's also important to think about reintroducing that nuance within the content that we are consuming. So kind of trying to help resist the urge to that black and white thinking, and practicing holding two ideas at once. So, you know, someone can do something we disagree with, someone can do something that we don't necessarily like, and still not be a terrible person.
Yeah.
You know, there's often a lot of grey and a lot of different sides and a lot of context to the situation that we aren't exposed to on social media. In the same way, in real life with our friends or our family or people we know, we'd have more access to that broader context of situations. And so noticing when you're about to make kind of a sweeping judgment about someone based on a single post or a clip that's, you know, maybe out of context, and thinking, is there possibly another side to this story? Is there more information? Am I being sucked into more black and white thinking?
Yeah. We've spoken about curating your feeds intentionally in our very first episode. Exactly. But to bring that back, we know that our feeds shape our internal dialogue. So consider, what are you following? What are you seeing daily? And if it's making you feel negative, consider unfollowing or unmuting those accounts, because you don't need to see them.
Muting them rather than unmuting them.
Oh. Muting them. Sorry. I'm so used to saying unmute yourself on like Teams or a Zoom call.
Your brain's just, it's primed. So think about curating your feed, and also in the same way as we spoke about in our very first episode, it might be also about adding in some more of those positive voices and accounts and things you're exposed to that lift you up and help you see the positive things more regularly.
Can we plug our own socials in this section?
Our socials are very positive and have lots of wonderful, in my opinion, information about supporting your mental health and well-being. Also, checking on your parasocial investment can be helpful here. So if you're feeling that genuine feeling of upset or feeling betrayal or feeling angry or feeling, those really personal responses about something that has happened in a creator's personal life, that's worth noticing and kind of being aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop following that person or you have to kind of terminate engaging with their content. It's more just holding that relationship a bit more lightly and thinking about, protecting your mental health and response and considering or thinking about why you may have developed that really strong investment and that kind of those personal feelings. So that's something to kind of keep in mind.
It's also helpful to remember that the majority of content you're seeing might actually be coming just from a small minority of people who hold those really polarizing views or who are, platforming this hostile content that gets disproportionately spread throughout the algorithms and might seem really common and widespread, but is actually not what the majority of people think or is not the tone that most people hold. But that's kind of what is showing up online.
Yes.
And shapes the tone for everyone on these platforms. Yeah. Although it only represents a small number of people, not the majority.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that there is lots of positive content. There's lots of, wonderful opinions and support and things to engage with that can, boost up our well-being as well. Yeah. But it's important to keep in mind that we might be seeing a lot of this negative, harsh and critical content and be thinking about and reflecting on how that affects us in our everyday life and in the way that we view both ourselves and others day to day, and trying to shift to more of the positive information online. And that's a wrap on today's episode.
Yes.
We will have references and any of the resources we have discussed in the show notes. We are also on socials at This Might Help Podcast, and this video will be on YouTube.
As always, we will have the links to some helplines and resources in our resource show notes as well. So if you're wanting further support, it's always available.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to us. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Bye.
This podcast was recorded on Wurundjeri land. We acknowledge and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of this country. We honour their knowledge and resilience and the ongoing impacts of colonisation on well-being.